Picture this, we're in Milan, at the world's biggest motorcycle stage, the EICMA 2025. Among all the major reveals and futuristic prototypes, one name draws more attention than the rest: BMW F450 GS. The bike that just months ago was nothing more than a rumor now materializes in front of everyone, carrying a clear promise to dominate the mid-size adventure segment. But here's the real question. Is this bike just another marketing move from BMW, or does it truly have what it takes to shake up the market and challenge well-established rivals? That's what we need to understand. The mid-size adventure market has been heating up fast. Over the past few years, brands like Royal Enfield, KTM, and even Moto Morini have been investing heavily in models between 400 and 500 cc. All of them are fighting for the same rider, someone who wants versatility, a motorcycle that can handle city commuting during the week, but also doesn't hesitate when it's time to hit a dirt road over the weekend. And that's exactly where BMW decided to step in. But the big question remains, did they arrive too late to the party? For those unfamiliar with BMW's tradition, the GS lineup has been synonymous with adventure for decades. The GS 1250 is a world icon, almost legendary among long-distance travelers. The GS 750 and 850 also carry that DNA. But there was always a missing piece, an affordable option aimed at riders who are just starting out or who don't want to invest in a heavy, full-sized adventure machine. The F450 GS is here to fill that gap. The problem? Expectations are sky high. Whenever BMW stamps the GS badge on a gas tank, it's not just about design, it's about reliability, performance, and above all, identity, and that's where the debate begins. BMW chose to launch the F450 GS with a brand new 450cc parallel twin engine, producing around 47.5 horsepower. In practice, that means the bike is immediately compliant with the A2 license restriction in Europe, which limits motorcycle power for new riders. This decision reveals BMW's clear strategy: attract fresh riders, giving them a gateway into the GS universe. But here's the challenge. Is 47.5 horsepower really enough to win over those who are already used to the performance of rivals like the KTM 390? Adventure, or even the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, both of which have become benchmarks in this category? Another interesting detail lies in the tech. Rumors suggest the bike might eventually receive BMW's ASA automatic transmission, a system that removes the need for a manual clutch, making riding easier and more accessible. But that option might only appear later. BMW may choose to release the first version with a traditional manual gearbox to keep costs lower. And that brings us to one of the biggest challenges: price. BMW has never been known for affordability. So, the real doubt is whether the F450 GS will actually compete head-to-head in terms of cost with its rivals, or if it will remain more of a premium choice aimed at those willing to pay for the badge. By now, it's clear that BMW isn't just releasing another motorcycle. It's trying to write a whole new chapter in its history. A machine that must carry decades of tradition into a segment where the competition is already fierce and well-positioned. In the next chapter, we'll break down the technical differences, design features, and whether the F450 GS has what it takes to outperform rivals like the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, the KTM 390 Adventure, and even new challenges rising out of Asia. Now that we've set the stage, let's dig into what really matters: the engineering and design decisions behind the BMW F450 GS. This isn't just about numbers on a spec sheet. It's about whether BMW made the right choices to compete in one of the most competitive segments in today's motorcycle market. Let's start with the engine. BMW decided to give the F450 GS a parallel twin, liquid-cooled 450cc engine, producing roughly 47.5 horsepower and torque that should land in the mid-40 Nm range. On paper, that places it right in the middle of its class. The KTM 390 Adventure delivers around 43 horsepower, while the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 comes in close to 40. That means BMW is playing it safe, not overpowering, but not underwhelming either. What's interesting is the choice of a parallel twin instead of a single cylinder like some of its rivals. This will give the bike smoother delivery, less vibration, and better highway cruising speeds. That alone could make it more attractive for riders planning long-distance touring, not just weekend dirt trails. But horsepower isn't everything. In this class, weight and handling often make or break a bike. While BMW hasn't revealed the official numbers yet, insiders suggest the F450 GS will weigh around 180 to 190 kilograms wet. That's heavier than KTM's 390, but close to the Himalayan's ballpark. The challenge here is clear. If the bike feels too heavy off-road, it risks losing credibility as a true adventure option. Riders expect agility, especially in this displacement category. BMW will have to prove that its suspension tuning and chassis design offset that potential drawback. Speaking of suspension, this is where things get really interesting. The F450 GS is expected to feature fully adjustable suspension on both ends. That's a huge step up compared to many rivals, which often come with only preload adjustment on the rear. For off-road enthusiasts, this is a major selling point. Being able to fine-tune the ride for different terrains, gravel, sand, asphalt, puts BMW a step ahead. If they manage to offer this at a reasonable price, it could become the strongest technical argument for the F450 GS in this crowded market. Then, there's the electronics package. While nothing is officially confirmed, BMW has a reputation for equipping even its entry-level bikes with solid rider aids. Expect features like switchable ABS, traction control, and possibly even riding modes. KTM already offers these on the 390 Adventure, and if BMW wants to compete head-to-head, it can't afford to cut corners here. What could tilt the balance is the rumored ASA automatic clutch system. Imagine being able to ride off-road without ever worrying about stalling in tricky terrain. For new riders, that's a game changer. The conflict is that such innovation might raise the price and alienate riders who want a raw, traditional experience. Now let's talk about design. The F450 GS carries the unmistakable GS styling cues: sharp lines, tall stance, beak-like front fairing. BMW clearly wants this bike to look like a mini GS 1250. And that makes sense, because identity is a huge selling point. Riders buying into the GS family want to feel they're part of that legendary lineage. But here's the risk. If it looks like a GS but doesn't ride like one, BMW could face backlash. A mismatch between promise and performance would be worse than launching a completely new design. And finally, we have to face the elephant in the room: the price tag. In Europe, the KTM 390 Adventure sells for around $7,500, and the Himalayan 450 is closer to $6,500. BMW will need to decide whether the F450 GS sits at a competitive $7,500, $8,000 range, or if they'll push higher, counting on the badge to justify the premium. The danger is clear. Price it too high and riders will stick with KTM or Royal Enfield. Price it right, and BMW could dominate this class within a year, so the conflict is drawn. BMW has the engineering, the tradition, and the design to make the F450 GS a success, but it also carries the burden of expectations, a risky pricing strategy, and the challenge of convincing riders that a mid-sized GS is just as authentic as its bigger siblings. In the next chapter, we'll step back and look at the bigger picture. What this bike means for BMW's long-term strategy, how it could reshape the adventure market, and whether it truly delivers on the GS legacy. Now that we've examined the specs, design choices, and direct competition, it's time to look at the bigger picture. What does the BMW F450 GS truly represent, not just for riders, but for BMW itself and the adventure segment as a whole? For BMW, this bike is much more than just another model on the showroom floor. It's a strategic move into a class of motorcycles that's been exploding in popularity worldwide. The adventure category has grown because riders today want flexibility, a machine that can commute Monday through Friday, but also carry luggage, cross a mountain trail, and maybe even handle an international trip. Until now, BMW's GS lineup was out of reach for many. The GS 1250 is legendary, but it's also heavy, intimidating, and expensive. The 750 and 850 are more accessible, but they still sit in a price bracket that doesn't appeal to newer or younger riders. With the F450 GS, BMW is saying, here's your way in, here's your first GS. But this is where the reflection gets deeper. Is the GS DNA something that can simply be scaled down? The GS brand has always been about durability, long-distance comfort, and a certain feeling of invincibility, that you can ride it to the edge of the world and back. A mid-size adventure bike like the F450 GS has to prove it can embody those values, not just mimic them. If the suspension, electronics, and build quality live up to expectations, it could genuinely open the GS experience to thousands of riders who previously couldn't justify the leap. If not, it risks becoming a bike that looks the part but doesn't carry the same soul. Another point worth considering is how this launch reshapes the competitive landscape. Right now, the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 appeals to riders who want simplicity, affordability, and ruggedness. The KTM 390 Adventure appeals to riders who want cutting-edge tech, lightweight, and performance. The BMW F450 GS is trying to carve out a middle ground: premium feel, GS identity, and versatile engineering. If it manages to balance those elements, it could easily become the default choice for riders entering the mid-size adventure market, especially in Europe and North America. But if BMW miscalculates the pricing or overestimates the draw of its brand, it could lose out to rivals who already built strong communities around their bikes, and let's not forget the long-term implications. A successful F450 GS doesn't just sell bikes, it builds loyalty. A rider who starts with the F450 GS at age 25 may move on to a GS 850 or GS 1250 later in life. BMW knows this, and that's why this launch matters so much. It's not just about selling a motorcycle today, it's about securing customers for decades. This is a strategic play to bring younger riders into the GS family before KTM or Royal Enfield get them first. So, what's the verdict? The BMW F450 GS is not just another launch, it's a pivotal moment for the brand. On one hand, it could redefine the entry-level adventure class, offering technology, refinement, and brand identity that no rival can match. On the other hand, it carries risks if it's overpriced, under-delivers off-road, or fails to capture the authentic GS spirit. It could end up being remembered as a missed opportunity. At the end of the day, riders don't just buy motorcycles, they buy stories, legacies, and promises. BMW is promising that even in a smaller package, the GS spirit lives on. The upcoming months after the EICMA 2025 reveal will show us whether this promise holds true. For now, one thing is certain: the mid-size adventure game has changed. With the arrival of the F450 GS, every competitor will have to rethink their strategy. And for us riders, that means more choices, more innovation, and a new chapter in the world of adventure motorcycles.